Okay, I think we have everybody in the call now. So welcome to the virtual Poudre RiverFest. And our presentation is the Poudre River, an important bird area, presented by the Fort Collins Audubon Society. We just have a couple of quick Zoom etiquette points to let everybody know. We ask that everybody stay muted throughout the call so that we can make sure we hear John nice and clearly. If you're willing and want to, you're welcome to leave your camera on so that John can see your wonderful faces as he presents. It's nice to have some interaction and not feel like we're all just living off in a Zoom world by ourselves. If you do keep your camera on, we ask that you just limit your background distraction. So if you have to step away to use the restroom or get a drink, feel free to turn your camera off for that period. We will also be taking questions, so feel free to use the chat to ask any questions that you would like during the presentation, and then we'll have some opportunity for questions at the end as well. So I am going to stop sharing my screen and I will let John take over from here and share more about his presentation.
Thanks, Laura. Give me just a second to share my screen.
Hold that.
Okay. So hopefully everybody is seeing my screen now. Is that correct? Laura?
Yes.
Thumbs up, we can see it.
Great, great. Well, hello, everybody. My name's John Shenot, and I'm the president of Fort Collins Audubon Society. We're proud to be a sponsor of the 2020 Poudre RiverFest, and I thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your day to watch this presentation. I'm a little bit worried about bandwidth, so if it's okay with you, I'm going to stop sharing my video and just show my slides. For the next half hour, we're going to explore the birds of the Poudre River and learn why the river is so important for birds. I'm going to try to keep this talk light and fun, but I'll also offer you some suggestions for things you can do to protect and enjoy the river and the birds that depend on it. The Poudre River is an amazing and beautiful resource for Fort Collins and all of northern Colorado. It's where we go to fish, to kayak, to swim, and to connect with nature in countless other ways. But as special as it is to you and me, it's even more treasured by the birds. Fort Collins Audubon Society has documented over 300 bird species that have been seen in the vicinity of the Poudre River, and that's only counting the portion of the river that flows through Fort Collins. Bird watchers like me are well aware of how much the birds depend on the river and its adjoining wetlands, but I sometimes wonder if my neighbors know how much beauty awaits them so close to home. So let's explore a little. Consider the great blue heron, the largest heron in all of North America. Standing nearly 4 feet tall, this regal bird can be found on the banks of the Poudre and nearby ponds year-round. You'll see them feeding in shallow water, taking fish, frogs, and a variety of other creatures. Or maybe you've noticed one of their nest colonies in the big cottonwoods that line the river near Prospect Avenue, like in the lower photo. Another gem you might find on the Poudre River is the wood duck. The male shown on the left features spectacular, almost gaudy plumage, while the more modest female shown on the right has a subtle beauty all her own. These little ducks love to hang out on the Poudre and in swamps and ponds close to the river, where they find the plants, seeds, and insects that make up their diet. They tend to be secretive. They nest in tree cavities, believe it or not, and always near water. Wood duck populations plummeted last century due to overhunting and loss of habitat, but rebounded quite a bit and stabilized thanks to the conservation efforts of groups like Ducks Unlimited and the Audubon Society. Now, I told you there are more than 300 species that can be seen along the Poudre River, so obviously I can't go into details about each one. But they say a picture tells 1,000 words, so let's look at a few more pictures of birds that you can see on or near the Poudre River. Like blackbirds, for example. The red-winged blackbird is probably the most abundant bird in North America, which can easily distract us from just how beautiful it is. And its cousin, the yellow-headed blackbird, rivals the red-winged in beauty, but is much less common. Still, you can see it along the Poudre River. Just a second. The cedar waxwing is a sleek, stunningly beautiful little bird with a bandit's mask and racing stripes on its wings and tail. At least that's how I think of it. While most duck species prefer ponds and reservoirs, common mergansers are happy to spend their time on flowing rivers like the Poudre. The male on the left is more colorful than the female on the right, as is often the case among bird species. But there are exceptions, like belted kingfishers. The female, shown here, is more colorful in this species than her male counterpart. The male lacks that rust-colored collar. Look for belted kingfishers plunging headfirst into ponds and the river and emerging with little fish. You also hear them chattering away as they fly up and down the Poudre. This stunning little fellow is a common yellowthroat, a type of warbler that breeds in marshy areas near the river. The family of birds called wood warblers has dozens of species in it, most of them featuring bright colors and attractive patterns. And the Poudre River corridor might be the best place to find warblers in all of northern Colorado. Another bird that migrates to our area each spring is the osprey. These large fish-eating hawks are often mistaken for eagles. Osprey numbers plummeted in the 1950s and 60s, in some places by more than 90%, but they steadily bounced back after the pesticide DDT was banned in 1972. And this is one of our country's best conservation success stories. There are 6 different kinds of swallows that can be seen near the Poudre River on a regular basis. And this shot shows 4 of them perched in the same tree at Riverbend Ponds. From left to right, you're looking at a tree swallow, a cliff swallow, a violet-green swallow, and 2 barn swallows. And then there are killdeers. Look for these little plovers on the muddy banks and gravel bars of ponds near the Poudre River. When alarmed, these guys say their name. Killdeer, killdeer, killdeer. And the last species we'll look at today is the bullock's oriole. These birds always nest near water. If you've seen something that looks like a little woven basket hanging from a tree over the river, it was probably an oriole nest. So that's just a taste of the hundreds of bird species you can find near the Poudre River. If you want to learn more about where to find birds and what to look for, I recommend that you register for a presentation on Thursday by Erin Youngberg, a biologist working for Bird Conservancy of the Rockies. You can find a description of her presentation and the registration link on the Poudre RiverFest website. Should be great. The main purpose of my talk today is to share with you the good news that the Cache-la Poudre Urban River Corridor was officially designated in 2018 as an important bird area. And I'm going to call that an IBA throughout this presentation, important bird area. I'll explain to you what an IBA is and why the river is so crucially important for birds. But first, let's start with a look at the Urban River Corridor itself, the boundaries of this IBA. The Poudre River IBA is comprised of 22 different parks and natural areas owned and managed by the city of Fort Collins, which line the river from just west of North Shield Street all the way downriver to I-25. And you can see them all shown on this map here. The whole idea of designating important bird areas started about 40 years ago, and it was led by a group called BirdLife International. That group works with partner organizations in countries around the world. Here in the US, their partner is the National Audubon Society. And Fort Collins Audubon is your local chapter of National Audubon. IBAs are places of statewide, national, or even international significance for the conservation of birds and other wildlife. To earn an IBA designation, a place has to meet standardized criteria, same criteria anywhere in the state, anywhere in the country, that not only indicate it's vitally important for birds, but also that the area is amenable to practical conservation actions that can protect and enhance bird populations. The Poudre River Urban River Corridor met those criteria, and it earned an IBA designation in 2018. IBAs are not very common. The Poudre River IBA is one of just over 50 in the entire state of Colorado, and just 2 in Larimer County. Fossil Creek Reservoir is the only other IBA in Larimer County. Before I move on, I want you to know that an IBA designation doesn't impart any special legal protections to a place. That's up to us. What an IBA is meant to do is draw attention to special places so that we in the community can focus our attention on protecting and enhancing those places. So why is the Poudre River Corridor important for birds, like this great blue heron? Well, to begin with, you have to understand that bird species vary in what they eat. Quite a few species get all or most of their food from rivers and the floodplains surrounding rivers. This is obviously true for birds that feed on fish or frogs or aquatic plants. But many species also nest and breed exclusively in these habitats. And then in addition, rivers are also important to many other species that don't necessarily breed in those habitats, but find food and shelter as they migrate to someplace else. Riparian corridors are like magnets for birds, but this is even more true in the arid West. Rivers and wetlands cover less than 4% of Colorado. In fact, some people say just 2%. These river corridors that are so vital to the survival of birds are also few and far between in Colorado. And that's what makes the Poudre River Corridor an important bird area. This assertion is supported by solid data. Fort Collins Audubon Society conducted bird censuses in 2001, 2002, and 2006 that proved the corridor was providing habitat for birds that is locally unique, scarce, and important. I already told you that more than 300 bird species have been seen in the designated IBA, but I wanted to put that in perspective. Just so you know, in all of Colorado, just over 500 different species have been seen in recorded history. That includes birds that frequent the eastern plains, the desert southwest, and the highest mountains. So it's truly remarkable that more than 60% of the species seen in the state have been seen along the Poudre River in a span of just a few miles and in the heart of Colorado's 4th largest city. Our river corridor is truly special. This gentleman is Bill Miller, a former president of Fort Collins Audubon and one of our most dedicated volunteers. Bill worked for more than a decade to earn an IBA designation for the river corridor. In addition to the censuses we did that proved the corridor met the criteria for an IBA, we needed to show that the city of Fort Collins supported the idea because they own and manage the land in the IBA. Bill went to one city committee after another pitching the idea and gaining endorsements until finally in 2018, the city council adopted a resolution supporting the IBA designation, which became official shortly thereafter. So that's the story of how we earned an IBA designation for the Poudre River corridor, but it's only the beginning of the story. The whole point of this effort has always been to galvanize community support for protecting and enhancing the IBA, and that work is going to have to continue for years to come. And this is where you come in. If you're listening to this presentation, I know you care about the river and the wildlife that depend on it, and we need your help. The eminent biologist Thomas Lovejoy, who popularized the idea of biodiversity, said that if you take care of birds, you take care of most of the environmental problems in the world. Every environmental problem I can think of has a negative impact on birds. Every environmental solution can have a positive impact on birds. My own love for birds, perhaps more than anything else, motivates me to care for the entire natural world, not just the birds, and to do my part to protect it. If we protect and enhance the Poudre River IBA, we will enjoy a healthier river. That's important not just for birds, but for other wildlife and for all of us humans. We all benefit from the natural areas in the IBA through reduced water pollution, through flood control, nutrient cycling, fantastic recreational opportunities, and the calming beauty of the scenery. Today, I want to suggest 3 things you can do to help us protect and enhance the Poudre River, not only in the IBA, but upstream and downstream as well. First, maybe most obviously, we can all lead a green lifestyle at home. None of us are perfect, but we can all do our part. And your actions can make a difference. You can conserve water or plant native species in your yard that birds and butterflies favor. You can minimize or avoid the use of pesticides. You can do something as simple as keeping your cats indoors. Second, you can volunteer in the Fort Collins natural areas in the IBA. The city sponsors a variety of one-day and longer-term stewardship projects and is always looking for volunteers. These projects involve planting native plants, for example, that enhance the habitat in the river corridor. And you can go to the Fort Collins Natural Areas website to learn more about these volunteer opportunities. I myself did this for a couple of years in one of our natural areas. And third, I'd love to have you join us as a member of Fort Collins Audubon Society and work with us to enhance the IBA and bird habitat throughout northern Colorado. Fort Collins Audubon, or FCAS, is a local chapter of the National Audubon Society. We serve nearly 1,000 members, not just in Fort Collins, but throughout most of Larimer County and parts of Weld County. We're an all-volunteer, nonprofit organization with a board of directors elected by our members. We don't have any employees. Instead, as the name suggests, we're a society. And that means that we strive to bring together people who share a passion for nature and to offer services to our members in the wider community throughout the year. We are not one of those organizations that you join and then only hear from once a year when they ask you to renew your membership and mail a check. That is not us. We exist to promote the appreciation, conservation, and restoration of ecosystems, focusing on birds and other wildlife through education, participation, stewardship, and advocacy. Let's look at some of the services that we offer in fulfillment of our mission. First, we publish a newsletter 9 times a year called the Ptarmigan. And our newsletter includes announcements, conservation alerts, and education articles. Second, we host monthly meetings from September through May where members and guests enjoy a presentation from an expert speaker. We try to keep these entertaining, and we cover a wide variety of topics, not just bird topics, with past presentations on owls and bees, and on bison, and on spiders, for example. Sadly, we have had to suspend our in-person meetings temporarily due to COVID, but we're still offering virtual meetings via Zoom. Fort Collins Audubon also hosts field trips, mostly to local birding hotspots led by experienced birders. People of all skill levels are welcome, and this is a great way for beginners to get started learning birds and meeting people with a similar interest. Like our programs, our field trips are temporarily suspended due to COVID, but we expect to start up again in 2021. Education is a core part of our mission. We've created informational posters and kiosks in parks and on bike paths to help people identify birds. Here's a picture of a volunteer at one of those kiosks. We also give presentations at community events in partnership with other groups like the Friends of Laurie State Park or the City of Fort Collins or Front Range Community College. We offer small scholarships to teachers and students who are studying bird-related topics or doing research. And we've created several publications targeted to both experienced and beginning birders. For example, here's a picture of the checklist we created that lists every bird species ever observed in Larimer County. And this is just one side of the checklist. It also tells you whether each species is common or rare, and whether it breeds here or only passes through rarely. You can download a copy of this from our website. And here's a picture of our pocket guide to the birds of northern Colorado. Again, this is only one of two sides. You can buy this pocket guide on our website at Jack's or at Wild Birds Unlimited. And it's an easy way to get familiar with the most common local species. And it fits easily in your pocket. Lastly, our society focuses on conservation. We advocate for the protection of important bird areas, of course. I've told you about that today. But we also work to improve habitat everywhere. We attend meetings of local public officials to speak up for wildlife. And we submit comments on national, state, and local rules that affect wildlife. In fact, I'm signed up to speak tonight at a Larimer County hearing on the proposed dam on the Poudre River, which Fort Collins Audubon opposes. If you want to learn more about Fort Collins Audubon Society or get membership information, visit our website, fortcollinsaudubon.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And our next meeting is Thursday, September 10th. It's going to feature guest speaker Kevin Cook, who's a well-known local naturalist and a former columnist for the Coloradoan newspaper. You don't need to be a member to attend our meetings. All the information is on our website. But I do hope you'll consider joining us as a member. It costs just $20 a year, and we'd love to have you join. So with that, I've left, I think, 5 or 6 minutes for questions. I don't see any in the chat box, but I would be happy to take questions if people would rather unmute their line. Do we need to unmute them, Laura, or can we just...
They can unmute themselves if they would like. It's usually easier if you want to try the raise hand feature. But if you want to ask a question, go ahead and unmute yourself. And if it gets to be a bunch of people, we'll figure out a different way.
All right. So that's a couple ways. You can type into the chat box. You can raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself if you have a question about the IBA or about Fort Collins Audubon, or about birds in general. Okay, I see a question from Rita. Thanks, Rita. What are the biggest habitat challenges facing the Poudre River? Um, so Rita, like everywhere else, it starts with development. Um, that's generally the biggest threat to habitat. Oh, everywhere in North America, but uh, in the large parts of the Poudre River corridor are already in protected status, whether it be uh, as federal land or state land or city of Fort Collins. There's also county land, and even Colorado State owns some land that adjoins the Poudre River. And I'm not especially worried that those already public lands or university lands are at risk of development. So probably the second thing I would point to, at least in terms of our immediate concerns at Fort Collins Audubon, is that we're very fearful that the proposed dam on the Poudre River will alter the daily and seasonal flows of water along the river and affect the habitats in the river, adjacent to the river, and in the floodplain. And explaining why would be probably take more time than I have left, but I would say that that's probably our most immediate concern in terms of the habitat along the Poudre River. Even though the lands are now public and protected, changes in the water flow regime in the Poudre River could have huge impacts on the plants and animals that depend on the river. And thanks for asking that question. Laura, I don't know whether you need to do wrap up at the end. We have 2 more minutes left and chance for another question. I do see one more question, but do you need these 2 minutes to wrap up, Laura?
No, go ahead and answer the last question. And then after that, I will wrap up just very quickly.
Great. So Aaron asked if we have an update on the development near the Heron Rookery. And Aaron, I'm going to assume that you mean the one that is south of Harmony Road and east of I-25. And I see that one of the attendees today is one of my fellow board members, Harry Rose. And Harry has followed that very closely. I'm wondering if he would be willing to unmute himself and answer that question.
Sure, John. The last city council meeting regarding that piece of property, the city council voted to require a 40% open space component to that property if it's developed. And the developer was very unhappy with that, and pretty much has been very quiet about his proposed project, which does as proposed is no way anywhere near complying with that requirement. So that's currently where that stands.
Thank you, Harry. I do want to, as I hand it back to Laura, just encourage everybody to enjoy the rest of your day, enjoy the birds of the Poudre River, and certainly tune in for the rest of the 2020 Poudre RiverFest. Laura?
Thanks, John. I am going to share my screen real quickly. So the Poudre RiverFest is organized by a committee of nonprofit organizations in the Fort Collins area. So I just want everybody to know who those organizations are. And the Poudre River Fest, its goal really is to raise funds to do restoration projects on the river. So if you are interested, we would love to have you donate to our cause by visiting poudreriverfest.org. And any donation amount is helpful in our mission to help restore and protect the Poudre River. Finally, we do have an online auction for the virtual Poudre River Fest. So we are auctioning off a New Belgium Brewery 2015 Felt Cruiser. So if you are interested or know anybody that is interested in this bike, you can go to poudreriverfest.org and go to the auction page to place a bid. And the auction will be open until 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time on Saturday. So thank you all again for coming. And we are excited to finish out the rest of the virtual Poudre River Fest. We have lots of events going on through Saturday, and you can see them at poudreriverfest.org. So thank you all. Thanks, John. Your presentation was great.